Today we're going to talk about irrational numbers and square roots. At the end of the lesson today, you should be able to find and estimate square roots and classify them as either rational or irrational. Let's begin by defining perfect square and square root. A perfect square is when you have a number times by itself. That answer is a perfect square. So if I have x times x, we write that as x squared. That's a perfect square. If we do it in number form, we have 2 times 2 equals 4. 4 is a perfect square. 5 times 5 equals 25. 5 is a perfect square. 10 times 10 equals 100. 100 is a perfect square. A perfect square is a number that has something times itself will give you that number. The square root is the number that we times by itself. For example, in the first example, x squared is your perfect square, x is your square root. 4 is the perfect square, 2 is the square root of 4. 25 is the perfect square, 5 is the square root of 25, and 100 is the perfect square, 10 is the square root of 100. So the square root, we used a symbol that looks like a check mark and a division sign mushed together. If I have the square root of 4, it means what number times itself will give me 4? And that answer is 2. So the square root of 4 is 2. The square root of 9 is what number times itself will give me 9? That would be 3. The square root of 16 is what number times itself will give me 16. It's not 8. 8 times 8 is 64. So remember, you're not dividing it in half. The answer is 4. 4 times 4 is 16. So 4 is the perfect square. Be careful with square roots. Most students tend to think that you're dividing in half, and you're not. So let's make a list of some perfect squares. So if I have the number 1, oops, my computer's slowing down here today. So if I have the number 1, if I take 1 times 1, I get 1. Therefore, 1 is a perfect square. So 1 times 1, that equals 1. And the square root of 1 is what number times itself will give me 1 would be 1. If I take 2 times 2, I get 4. These are my perfect squares. And the square root of 4 is 2, because 2 times 2 is 4. If I take 3 times 3, I don't get 6, I get 9. 9 is a perfect square. And the square root of 9 is 3. If I have 4 times 4, that gives me 16. And the square root of 16 equals 4. 5 times 5 gives me 25. And the square root of 25 is 5. 6 times 6 is 36, and the square root of 36 is 6. 7 times 7 is 49, and the square root of 49 is 7. 8 times 8 is 64, and the square root of 64 equals 8. 9 times 9 is 81, and the square root of 81 equals 9. And 10 times 10 is 100, and the square root of 100 equals 10. So if we take a moment here and we look at our middle column, all of these numbers here are what we call perfect squares. They are numbers that when I take the square root of them, all of their square roots are whole numbers. Now, it says find two square roots of 5. So we want to ask ourselves, what number times itself will give us 5? Will give us 25, sorry. So the number 5 times 5, 5 times 5 equals 25. But there's also another number that will give us 25, and that's negative 5. Negative 5 times negative 5 will also equal positive 25. If you remember, two negatives give you a positive. So in essence, there are two square roots for every perfect square. So the square root of 25 could either be positive 5 or it could be negative 5. Now to save a little time, sometimes you'll see positive negative 5. That means it's positive or negative 5. Now it says find the square roots of each number. Let's look at the first number here, which is 36. My computer's awfully slow today. There we go. So I want to look at what number will give us 36 when we multiply it by itself. Well, if you think about it, 6 times 6 is 36. Therefore, the answer would be positive or negative 6. Now, what number times itself will give us 1? That would be 1 times 1 is 1, or positive or negative 1. Now, what about 1/16? This got moved a little bit. Well, you have to do this one in parts. So do the numerator first. What's the square root of 1? Well, that would be 1. And the square root of 16 is 4. So my answer would be positive or negative 1/4. And if you want to check yourself, 1/4 times 1/4, multiply the numerators, you get 1. Multiply the denominators, you get 16. Now, what happens if I don't have a perfect square? For example, the square root of 28 is not a perfect square. Therefore, it's not going to be a whole number. I must then kind of estimate what it would be and where it would fit on a number line. So if you look at the number line below, I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, just a regular number line, and I'm going to estimate where it's going to fit. So I start off trying to find the perfect squares. So 0 times 0 is 0, 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3 is 9, 4 times 4 is 16, 5 times 5 is 25, 6 times 6 is 36, 7 times 7 is 49, 8 times 8 is 64, and 9 times 9 is 81. Then I look at the square root of 28 and I ask myself, what two numbers is 28 between? Well, 28 is between 25 and 36. So I know my answer has to be between 5 and 6. Which one is 28 closer to? Is it closer to 25 or is it closer to 26 or 36? Well, 28 is only 3 away from 5, but it's 8 away from 36. So it's going to be closer to 25, which means it's going to be somewhere here. So I'm going to estimate that to approximately 5. That's to the nearest integer, but now it wants me to estimate it to the nearest tenth. And that's going to take a little bit of math. So what I'm going to start doing is I'm looking at my number line. I know that halfway between would be 5.5. And the square root of 28 is really close to 5, so I'm going to assume it's not probably 5.5, it's probably going to be less than that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with, let's say, we'll start off with 5.2. So I'm going to take 5.2, sorry, and I'm going to times it by itself, because remember, a square means you times it by itself. And when I take 5.2 times 5.2, I get 27.04. Well, that's less than 28. So 28 is greater than that. So then I'm going to try 5.3. So take 5.3 times 5.3, multiply those together, and I get 28.09. That's above 28. So I know that the square root of 28 has to be between these two numbers. Looking at it, it's going to be closer to 28.09. So therefore, I'm going to estimate the answer to the nearest tenth to be 5.3. Now let's try another one. We want to estimate the square root of 38. So if you look at your chart or you do it in your head, you'll see that 6 times 6 is 36, and 7 times 7 is 49. And 38 is in between there, but it's closer to which number? It's closer to 36. So if I round it to the nearest integer, it's going to be approximately 6. But now I need to round it to the nearest tenth. So I'm going to pick 6.2 again because it's pretty close. So I'm going to do my math. 6.2 times 6.2. 2 times 2 is 4. Carry the 1, I get 13. Place holding 0. 6 times 2 is 12. Carry the 1, I get 37. 4, 5, 8, 3, 2 decimal points. So that's a little high, 38.54. So I know that 6.2 is close, but it's high. So now I'm going to try 6.1. So 6.1 times 6.1. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 6 is 6. Place holding 0. 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 6 is 36. Add them together. 1, 12, carry the 1, 7, 3. So now I have 37.21. That's too low. So I know that my answer is going to be in between these two. And I know that at 38, remember you're always going back to 38. 38 is closer to 38.54, so it's going to be closer to 6.2. So my answer is going to be approximately 6.2.